Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I come to the floor to speak against the budget resolution's containment of language that might direct our colleagues in the future to open up drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I thank my colleague from Massachusetts for his leadership on this issue and for being here on the Senate floor tonight to talk about how important it is that we continue to maintain the wildlife refuge that exists. You know, our public lands have been under assault from this administration. It comes in all forms, and it certainly comes in the form of trying to use the Antiquities Act in reverse and to basically say you can open up public lands for drilling. That's really caused a controversy in Utah with Bears Ears. The number of sportsmen, fishermen, hunters who value these public lands, who don't want to see them go to a list of individuals that might take this resource that it took Teddy Roosevelt, and I'm pretty sure a couple of hundred years for our country to amass. Now people are putting a for sale sign on them to give a tax break to millionaires. So it's not that this is the only issue. As I said, the notion that people are taking our public lands and trying to turn them back, the notion that people are giving land to coal companies so they can harvest coal off of federal land and then not charging them a royalty rate that's compensatory. We tried to fix that, and obviously this Secretary of Interior is trying to roll that back and give coal companies a sweetheart deal. So that's another thing. Now we have an EPA director who has basically had a mining company walk into his office and say, oh, by the way, we want to drill at the headwaters of Bristol Bay, the largest salmon run, probably responsible for 50% of sockeye salmon around the world. And immediately after he left the EPA director's office, the EPA administrator sent a letter out saying, yes, let's move forward on this idea. So much for due process and so much for preserving what has taken us hundreds of years to put together so that the public can recreate on public lands. So yes, the hunting, fishing, Native American, recreational communities are all upset. And now, what's the latest play? Oh, let's stick in the budget resolution the opening of the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. Something that has been so precious to the United States of America as a Serengeti for wildlife, an intact ecosystem that doesn't exist in other places in the United States. And yet people are trying this very, what I call sneak attack, just like they did 12 years ago. Just as if people tried to open up ANWR before and on its own merits couldn't get it opened up, and so put it in the defense authorization bill, thinking that there's no way people could vote against money for the troops, and so if you stick it in the DOD bill, that's how we can get the Arctic Wildlife Refuge open. Well, it didn't work then, and it's not going to work now. The American people are not for legislative sneak attacks, backdoor ways to threaten members. I know the president wants to get a big package together, get health care in there, throw in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, hope that people can't vote no, and move forward. And I would say, if this is such a wonderful idea, let it stand on its own merits. This area, as we can see, is a very pristine part of the United States. Having oil rigs, and now people are saying, oh, well, we could do some sort of drilling. Why do you want to have drilling in a refuge? And when people say, oh, well, there are refuges that have had drilling, if they were prior to it being declared a refuge, yes. But this is a pristine area that we decided to set aside. Why? Because, as I mentioned, it is a Serengeti. It is a Serengeti of caribou and other wildlife, over 200 different species that come to the area, and to say nothing about the population in the region of polar bears. So why do we want to destroy this? Why do we want to destroy this? It's not the size that we are somehow thinking that we're going to get such oil reserves out of. In fact, the issue is really with this price of oil and the export market that's now been created, this oil is going on to the larger world market. So why is it that we think that this is going to help us in the United States? So people are trying to use a budget process to increase the deficit by $1.5 million to pay for tax cuts for wealthy people. So you're willing to degrade the environment as a way to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy. I don't agree to it. I don't think the American people agree to it. They know that this wildlife refuge has been attacked many times. They know that every time someone has had to come up with some backdoor way of trying to get the refuge opened. And I think my colleagues should understand and take note that these have all failed. They failed in the past because this idea is not the brightest, most brilliant idea in America. It's not the thing that is going to turn the U.S. economy around. It's not the thing that is going to help us really get tax reform. It is not the idea that is even going to help us with the bipartisan effort to move forward on an energy package that is an energy package. If you think about it, we passed an energy bill out of here 8-5 to 15. If it was something that could be done in that package, it would have been done in that package. So I know now that we are going to have more exploration in Alaska. I know there's going to be more exploration in many parts of the Arctic. There's going to be a rush of Arctic nations to look at oil drilling off of our coast and in the Arctic Circle. The United States should get ready and participate in those discussions. I'm first in line to say that we need a fleet of icebreakers to be prepared and be ready for the advent and the change in the Arctic. And there will be many discussions about where drilling should take place. I guarantee you, even if you opened up the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, it would not stop this debate about more drilling in Alaska. So let's remember that we set aside this pristine area for a very specific purpose, to keep the uniqueness that has existed in this part of the world, just a very, very, very small piece of it, and continue to have the debate in other parts of Alaska and in the Arctic about what the development of oil resources are going to be. So I encourage my colleagues not to fall prey to another backdoor attempt at trying to open up the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. Don't fall to a cynical bill where somehow somebody's going to try to cram everything in it and say, you can't vote against it because it has too many things for your state. Let's do the work that takes to do bipartisan work. Work together, agree on the things that we can agree on, and move forward. I guarantee you our energy policy will be better in America for doing that. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.